So the truth is, now one thing is I actually work in audit. So I think, let's be okay. But I mean audit and compliance. So it just comes up a lot, like audit and compliance, instead of just
Mhm.
compliance. You get what I'm saying? So that it's a lot really, like it's a lot.
No problem. Hi everyone, you're welcome to another episode of Collateral Growth. I know it's been a while, but I still remain your host, Frances, and you can call me Franny sometimes, not every time. And today's episode, we're bringing in somebody from a very spicy career path, and is one that in tech we've just been asking why, because these people frustrate processes, in my opinion. But they're actually here to do. He's here to represent the career path to actually defend themselves and tell us, this is why we do what we do, and we're sorry, but this is it, right? So here I have Daniel. I call him Dante, but his name's Daniel Adejoro Timmy, right? And he works in compliance and audits. And we all know that, especially as a product person, they are the ones that be hindering a lot of things. In fact, once compliance is involved with something, I'm already offended because they are going to. I'm pre-offended. I know they're actually going to offend me. So yeah, Dan Tips, can you tell us your career journey?
Hi,
You
Francis.
So can you tell us a bit about yourself, your journey, what you do, what you used to do, all of that?
All right, cool. My name is Daniel Adejoro. I currently work at Sterling as an internal auditor. That's my 9 to 5, pretty much. As an internal auditor. But prior to Sterling, I had a lot of inroads into tech, if you
Like,
could call it that. I worked as a product designer for some time. I worked in a bit of product development for some time. Then yeah, so that's basically it about me. Um, so I think the question I most people have is, I mean, why do you move from tech to audit? Because it seems like
mhm.
it's an
It's a
inverted way
huge,
to
like,
it's a
from where
huge
to
leap.
where.
Oh, all right.
Mhm.
I mean, prior to starting out in tech, I studied accounting. That's what I studied in school. I was an accounting student, so I'd always wanted to work in audit. Beyond just audit, I wanted to build a career in compliance. That's where my interests really were. So I think tech for me was, at that time, everybody was crazy about tech. Everybody was crazy about tech, and I felt, if I were to build a career in compliance and be very very relevant, really, I needed something of experience or insights into how the world of tech operated, because everywhere now, either it's a tech product, a lot of products are a lot of things that people offer, that companies offer, are very dependent on tech. So I
Mhm.
felt getting that sort of insight into how tech was or how tech operated would help me very much as a compliance person, as an audit person. So that was pretty much it for me. Why I decided to have sort of dance with products before
Such
moving back to what I really wanted to do, which was audits and compliance.
okay, but then it feels like a huge kind of a huge leap
Yeah,
because it's like, oh, I used to be a product designer, but now I'm into audit and compliance, and it's like from where to where, like,
from where to where.
yeah. But then
I
it
mean,
makes sense to
yeah,
understand the industry and then coming into so that you're not looking like you don't know what you are doing.
we're doing it.
You actually have knowledge and experience in this, so that when you're actually speaking to people, you're not speaking to them based on, oh, from a compliance point of view, you're actually weighing it from both ends and you're finding a middle ground, which is like really important. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's just it.
yeah.
So you've answered the
So,
question for me.
so why did you want to study accounting? Let's start from the beginning. The
So
beginning.
why I wanted to study accounting. So right from secondary school, I'd always been heavy on accounting. I'd always wanted to. That was like my favorite subject right from secondary school. Knowing how money works, the business of money, how companies are accounted for. And I mean, it's a bit of a tautology how companies account for, but that's just the best way I can explain it. So how companies account for every little penny that comes in, every little penny that goes out. How do you track it? And it was a bit. I mean, some people could call it boring, but I love that sort of methodical approach. And to be honest, there's a lot of science to how accounting works. If I could say so. I think the first accountant really was, I think it was the Summa, actually brought up the debit and credit entry principle in this Summa de arithmetica. So accounting has
Mhm.
always been hinged on mathematics and statistics. So how the business of money operated was very interesting to me. So when I had the options of what to study in university, it was either between economics or accounting. Those were the two things that I had at that time. I was accounting. Accounting was just it for me. So when I got into school, I mean, looking at accounting beyond financial accounting, because most idea that you would have going into school would be financial accounting, but there's a lot more in accounting. You're talking about management accounting, helping management make decisions. There's even the aspect of finance, right there. There's forensic accounting. There's oil and gas, like your accounting specifically for oil and gas companies, and then there's auditing. So many, I mean, there are other sectors, but auditing was what really drew me the most
Okay.
because it deals more with providing assurance for management, providing assurance for the stakeholders, the shareholders, people who have vested interest in a company's success. Provide them with this sort of assurance that the financial statements, business processes, everything really is done to scale, and it's done as it's meant to be. And I mean, I was if you ask an auditor will tell you I'm not out to look for fraud, and that's the honest truth. A lot of people think that, oh, as an auditor, as a compliance specialist, look for
Exactly.
fraud, but
Right.
that can't be further from the truth. You're just trying to make sure that statements, processes, everything is free from what we call material misstatements. So material misstatements are misstatements that have material implications that could, I mean, if, for example, if you were looking through a particular financial statement and you're getting profit of maybe 100 billion instead of 10 billion, that's a material misstatement. That's something that if you're an outside person, you will feel, "Oh, this company is doing so well," and probably invest all your money there, not knowing that the profit that they are actually reporting is not what. So those sort of material misstatement that can cause people to make hefty judgments that might potentially cost them. You're trying to make sure that your statements are free from that. So that's the main thing for us as auditors. I'm trying to set up control mechanisms also. That also comes into play, setting up control mechanisms to make sure that, okay, this in the future statements will be free from material misstatements. So that was what drew me to accounting and to auditing as a field, as a professional, audit compliance. That sort of inroad or insights into understanding how the process works, and then making sure that it's up to code. That's just it.
Okay. So what's can you explain, like, to someone that doesn't know anything about auditing and compliance, what you really do? What is like a day to day work that you do?
Well, I mean, so it's a bit unique in terms of where you work and what you do. So for an external auditor, for example, is a bit different from what an internal auditor does. So an external auditor will probably, if you're looking at let me say a fintech, for example, as an external auditor, you're probably just going to be picking financials and looking through for the whole year. But an internal auditor, you have more of a day-to-day oversight, really, or like a day-to-day insight into how things operate. Then even down to your independence, because as an external auditor, you're more independent. And this is just IIA stuff. You're more independent as an external auditor than an internal auditor, because as an internal person, you're working there, so you don't want the company to
Yeah.
go on that as an internal person. But at the same time, too, the base root of it is what you're basically doing, whether an external auditor, internal auditor, in whatever industry, be it in finance, be it in manufacturing, whatever it is you're doing. The
Mm.
basic thing you're doing is that you're looking at, business processes for one. That's one thing you're looking at. You're looking at business processes. You're looking to make sure that the policies that have been set up both by the management and then by regulators, those policies
Okay.
are adhered to. So it also extends beyond financial statements, because a lot of times people misconstrue audit as just being about financial statements. You're
Mm-hmm.
picking SOFP, for example, and reviewing. It extends beyond that, even though that forms part of what you do. But for example, if you're an auditor in, say, a bank, for example,
Okay.
is your financial statements is not the only thing that drives
Like,
performance. That's not the only thing that's there. There's a lot that goes on. So trying to make sure that, okay, the policies that have been set up, because a lot of times management will probably set their own policy for this particular team or this particular product. The team in charge themselves will probably set up their own policy. And then you also have maybe CBN guidelines or whatever guidelines that exist on how this business can operate. So you're trying to make sure that, okay, all of these things are adhered to. You pick a process, you review a process end to end, check for the control mechanisms that are available. So the control mechanisms, I mean, may not be adequate enough for the sort of policies that have been set up against that process. So it's your
okay.
job to point out and say, oh, this thing you're doing, oh, while I admire you guys for doing this process, you're breaching policy here, 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 here. So you have to have some sort of understanding about policy and then the product itself, because it's one thing to know what the policy is saying, it's another thing to know what the product is doing. So
Mm-hmm.
that sort of understanding. So if as an auditor, you have to be very well read, because I can't go into your space, I can't audit you if I don't know what you do
Okay.
and if I don't know what you're meant to do. So even if I don't work, even if I don't know anything about how a product should work, My job is to go and research and find out and look at
Mm-hmm.
other places and see how other people do their things and then see the policy that exists. So on a day to day, your job is pretty much reviewing business processes, reviewing statements that probably accrue, financial statements, financial reports. Business performance too comes into play a lot of times. So all of that really factors in our day to day as auditors.
So okay, okay. Um, that's cool. So, what are the loopholes that are in compliance and auditing? What do you think should be done better? What can be done better in the role in general?
I think one major thing that can be done better is organizations making, let's say investments now, or making, putting a lot of interest into getting their auditors up to code in how with tech. I mean, you could look at something like AI, for example. AI is a pretty young space, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so much promise of what we can do as human beings with AI. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of legal ramifications. There are some things you should not be able to do with AI. For example, I should not be able to make pictures of someone and then upload it online and say, oh, it's just AI. Even if those pictures will usually put that person in trouble. So things like that, legal ramifications like that might come into play. So for auditors to understand, how are these tools, how could they potentially create problems? And how can I review business processes around these tools? I mean, you could say technology is growing at a massive pace, and there's a lot that we need to know. As auditors, as compliance people, we're meant to be ahead of the curve in terms of knowledge. We're meant to be the go-to person. I mean, if anybody wants to set up anything in that establishment, they're meant to first come and consult you that, "Oh, bro, how far I want to do this thing. What do you know about so, 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 and so?" We're meant to get them an answer on the fly. So organizations should, and even auditors themselves and compliance people themselves should try and get up to code with how IT works, how technology works. Even IT audit, I know IT audit is a growing space. There are a lot of people who are going into IT audit. You have the CISA exam for one that grades IT auditors, and I think it's a wonderful exam when it comes to getting the IT auditors to know about what's going on in the world because their syllabus is very robust. So things like that, auditors should get involved, writing exams like that, going for seminars like that, going for sections like that, that would get them up to code with how technology really affects business processes. So that's one thing I feel like auditors need to do.
Okay, so this question I'm about to ask. You guys play a huge role in making sure that a company doesn't get into trouble, especially like lawsuits and all of that, right? So, what happens if what happens if a compliance person makes a mistake?
What happens if a compliance person makes a mistake? I mean, you're going to be actionable. You're going to be answerable for whatever mistake you make, and that's kind of, and I feel like that's what a lot of people don't know about the job because if you're the compliance person in charge of a product or of a team, and then something comes up, there's a potential fine to be paid for policy breaches. I mean, fraud, for example, you could lose billions or millions really to fraud. As a compliance person, they're going to come and ask you, what were you doing? Why didn't you review this process? And I think because a lot of times, for audits, really, our job really involves sampling. So you might not be able to review everything, but if you can prove that you at least did your job to the best of your capacity, then you might have some sort of reprise. But really, we try our best to make sure that things don't go south, because if things do
Yeah.
go south, you have to be answerable for it, because you definitely have to ask, but what were you doing? Why didn't you see these errors come up? Why didn't you see these errors creep up? So that's one thing that I know that we are usually very afraid, not afraid of, but we don't usually like there's be problems after we have reviewed this process.
So, what kind of consequences would happen if an auditor makes a mistake for a company?
I mean, you could lose your job. I feel like that's the most that's the most likely consequence. I mean, you definitely have to lose your job. It's something that is so material to the point where, I mean, if you look at, let's say Aaron, for example. I don't know if you know about the Aaron scandal. It's a very prominent. In fact, it's like a call to action for most auditors. Aaron, however, I think who were the auditors then? I can't. I'm trying. It was a very big. Then it used to be the big five. It used to be the big five. So it was that, I can't remember the name of that particular company now. They were like one of the big five. And they were the ones that were the auditors for Enron. And then Enron were cooking the books from top to bottom. And then it came to light and people lost a shit ton of money because you had
Wow.
investors in the stock market who were investing money, like their whole life earning in Enron's stock, with the idea that Aaron was making profits, but they were really not making profits. Aaron was using the valuation and all of that to kind of start part the books and all of that. And auditors did not see this. And as at the time the whole thing came to light, I think there were even legislation that were passed to kind of like make auditors more accountable for things that go south in course of their engagement. So Aaron is like a very either Aaron scandal is a very, very big warning cry for most auditors that see
Well,
the job you're doing is not just fun and games. You're responsible for people's lives. And that's the truth because if you and money, especially when it comes to money matter, people will probably put a lot of money in your product. People believe in your product, both the shareholders and your users. You'll probably believe in your product so much to the extent where, or your business or your organization so much to the extent where they invest a shit ton of money there.
mhm.
And when things go south, they are the ones that lose it. So definitely you have to be accountable for that. If you involve losing your job, you could even serve jail time if it can be established
Wow.
that you were culpable. Yeah, you could serve jail time. Yeah, I mean if the shareholders take the company to court and they say the auditors knew that this thing was happening and they did not say anything, you're definitely going to have to go to jail. That's most likely going to happen. Going to jail. So
Okay,
so
are there licenses to like you like exams as questions you take to be an auditor or someone in compliance?
yeah, I mean for audits, I can speak for audits really because I'm an auditor. Definitely, it's usually encouraged for all auditors to have ICANN like certification, like you have to be chartered. That's a very big requirement for auditors because ICANN is like our governing body. And then, I mean, if you can't move anyhow, if you move anyhow and ICANN finds out, you're going to be losing your. I mean,
Okay, you
you
can
could face
actually use
potential
both of
sanctions and
them.
all of that. Then we also have, at least for internal auditors, we have what we call the IIA. It's the Institute of Internal Auditors. It's like a body that we also belong. Then you have exams like certified fraud examiner. There are many certifications that exist. So it depends on what you're really doing and what you feel like. For IT auditors, really, you could CISA also comes into play. You have to write CISA. So there are many exams that really factor. But for auditors, mainly ICANN is like our biggest governing body because
Your biggest one.
ICANN covers both accounting, audit, and all of that. So
Okay, okay. Oof, but going to jail, that's a lot. That's a lot. Okay, so do you still enjoy auditing? Like since you started doing it till now, do you still enjoy it? Or do you think you're going to pivot into something else later?
I think as of this moment, I do enjoy it, and I'll say I don't want to gas up the organization. I don't want to say because of where I work, but I think I enjoy it really because if you work in a space that is dynamic, that is ever changing, and this answer varies from auditor to auditor. You could find an auditor who is not maybe the company you work for, and that's for internal auditors
Mm-hmm.
particularly. The company you work for is not one that is so dynamic, so you might feel bored falling into the same routine. But if you're in a place that is constantly changing or a volatile industry where you have to, continuously be exposed or getting information and insights, there's a lot of fun in all this really. Like because the same way you have people innovating around tech and innovating around software development and people innovating around all of that, we also innovate in all this because the people you're trying to catch, let me not use catch because we don't look out for fraud, but let's just say catch. People you're trying to catch are also innovating. So you have to innovate your own way too. So
Yeah.
all of that comes into play. So if you're in that kind of dynamic space where you're constantly, you're allowed to improve or allowed to explore ways that you can make the job, better, both for yourself or your team. Then yeah,
Okay.
it's an enjoyable place to be. I mean, it's an enjoyable place to be. If you so as of this moment, I do enjoy it. Will I eventually pivot to something else? Because truthfully, whenever I speak to a lot of my friends and we talk about like you're an auditor, like don't you feel old? Like all this feels like a very old man sort of
Yeah.
job. And I understand it. I really understand it, but it's something I enjoy doing. But I mean, will I eventually pivot? Never say never. Anything can happen. But as of this moment, I don't really see a reason to want to do that. It's
So you
something I
you
enjoy
don't
doing.
find
So,
it boring then? It's not boring at all to you.
but I mean, like I said, organization also comes into play. But I do not find all this boring at the moment. At the moment,
Okay. What's the toughest part of auditing or
the
compliance?
toughest part of auditing.
Mhm.
The toughest part of auditing. Um, Two sides to it. One is when you have auditees who are not they're not open to hearing what you have to say. Because the truth is I can only audit you as much as you allow me to. And yes, I mean you have to also go out of your way to find your own evidence. And as an auditor, you can't depend solely on primary data. So you know this, we have primary data, we have secondary data. So primary data is what I get from you as the auditee directly, what you give me. Secondary is what I go out of my way to find. So you can't depend on primary data. For any audit that is driven by solely primary data,
Mm-hmm.
the risk level is usually very high because I mean if you're going to be giving me the information, then there's a likelihood you might have tampered with it before you give me, and you might have adjusted it before you give me. But at the same time, I can only audit you as much as you allow me to. So if you don't let me come into your space and we don't work together, you're resistant to what I'm here to do. And a lot of people are scared of auditors, and I understand why. I do understand why. But if you don't allow me, enjoy that because the same way you do your job and you enjoy your job, this is also my job. I have to enjoy it to do well. So that's like a major thing when you have auditors who might not be open to you doing your job. So that's one thing. Then the second side of things for that can make audits very tough is a very very dynamic or volatile environment. So what I
Okay.
you know I initially said dynamic environment makes things interesting. It also makes it tough because you might be missing out on things because you don't know that things have changed. There are little and let's say you work in a space like finance, and I'm sure everybody who is on Twitter these days knows how erratic CBN can be. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, a lot of those things that people see, that come out online are just things that directly affect users at the end of the day. There are a lot of policies too that are internal that a lot of people don't use because it doesn't really matter to you as a user. It's just directed at maybe the banks or fintechs or payment service providers and all of that. So when you're in
Mm-hmm.
that sort of environment, yes, the policy might not be entirely friendly to your organization, but you're there to make sure that they are abiding by those policies. So those sort of things might get having to be knowledgeable because before I review like I said, before I review what you do, I have to understand what you do. I have to understand it even more than you. That's the thing, and it's very very tough. If I'm going to, if I'm, for example, now if I'm going to review your product, if you come here and say, okay, we need an auditor, we have done from January to December, come and review our books, and I'm going to be taking you both your processes and your financials. I need to be aware of what your processes should look like, even more than you that you're there. So that knowledge, that constant knowledge acquisition side of things might make the work a bit tough. So those are like the two toughest things I can say, for audit.
Okay. Okay. That actually sounds tough because people don't open up to you, you can't really get your job done. Which even reminds me of my first working experience. Okay, not my first, but during West period when I was back in school. There was a day every Friday the auditor used to come. And that day used to be so quiet and people used to be move around gently because they're like, auditor is around and everybody is afraid. I'm like, what's the
There's
problem
nothing
with
to be
auditor
scared of.
being
That's the thing. There's nothing to be scared. There's really nothing to be scared of.
free? Okay, so what is the? Can you give a scenario of the craziest thing that's happened in your auditing career where, like, there was chaos and you had to find a way to solve it, or your team had to find a way to solve it?
So I think because like I said, all this is also a very okay because I mean we have auditing standards,
Mm-hmm.
where we have professional competence and due care, and then confidentiality. So a lot of times we try not to divulge whatever we see. Because the truth is that something that you might say that you might feel like, oh, you're just sharing with your friend. And the truth is, you're with your guys. You might want to just jabber and say, oh, this sort of thing happened. Not knowing that that's one thing you might say, it might eventually, torpedo. Because someone might hear and say, this happened in this particular institution. Let me go and tell my friend. Because truthfully, you can
Mm-hmm.
ask any auditor anyway. You see a lot of things on a daily basis that if people, who might not be in that organization see, or who might not be reviewing that particular engagement. I mean, if you look at external auditors, guys that work in external the big four, and they go and do their thing, they see things that and they're like, damn, these things could potentially cause problem. But there's a reason why those auditing standards exist for us. So for auditors now, we have to there's integrity, there's objectivity, then there's confidentiality. We're not meant to divulge. So I'm trying to stay on that part of confidentiality and not divulge unnecessary
Mm.
information. So that's why I might have to stray from that question a little bit, if you permit me.
Okay, okay, but
I mean I mean I could even go to jail if I stray from that sort of that sort.
That's fine.
But yeah, you have to confidentiality is very, very key as an auditor.
Okay, so
Those are
I'll
like
ask you
standards that we follow.
one final career question. Would you
Yeah.
advise anybody to go into auditing? Like, if somebody comes to you, like, I don't know what to do. I started accounting, or I started something in finance, and I don't know a career path, but it looks like what you do is great. Would you advise people, the young ones, to come into auditing and compliance?
Definitely. Like, to be honest, I don't know. I feel like, anyway, but it's probably because of how the world is currently and how there's a lot of interest in more flashy things. Not to say all this is not flashy, all this is flashy on its own, but given that I can't even tell you, if you ask a software developer now, it will probably give you like a long story and you guys will have fun. But me, I can't do that. So a lot of things that you do are probably hidden. But I think if you want to succeed as an auditor, the one thing you have to look out for, if you're someone who is very methodical,
Mm-hmm.
like you're very, very methodical, and you have an eye for how things should operate.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can pick out little deviations from the norm. I feel like audit would be a very fantastic job for you to
Okay.
do because those are kind of people that's basically the skill set you need to succeed as an auditor. As a compliance person, as a control person generally, because we generally classify audit compliance as control career. They are all control. So if you have an eye for that, then definitely that should be your space. And I mean, if you also somebody who likes to innovate and you can come up with like solutions to problems, because a lot of times audit is not just about oh, I found error in your books.
Oh,
That's not just the only thing. You have
okay.
to also recommend solutions. Oh, how can we address these things and make sure they don't happen next time? Process solutions, people solutions, system solutions. So if you're that kind of person, then why not try working on this? It's
Okay.
not a
So,
big deal.
okay. What are the hierarchies to come to auditing? Do you have to become senior auditing officer? Like, that's the peak.
So it depends on, like I said, it also depends on the organization you are. For example, if you're in maybe like in the big four, for example, probably going to start as an associate. I'm not sure how it works. An associate, then you go to senior associate, then analyst, then your normal career. This thing. So it's unique to every organization. Some organizations have this chief audit executive as the topmost. You're probably starting out as the junior auditor, work your way up to senior auditor, maybe a sector lead, maybe the team lead or the team, and then work your way up. If you're lucky, can become a CA. So it's very much. It's not. It varies depending on where you're working. If you're
Okay.
working in the big four, you have a much more structured way that you can climb up the ladder.
Okay. Because in my head it's just okay. Associate auditor, auditor,
So
senior
it
auditor,
depends on the organization. Some organizations and I always tell people that if
then
you're
head
if you're going
auditor.
to,
We're done auditing.
I get you. If also, I mean, if you're going to be working in audit, one personal advice is it's very ideal to find an organization that allows people grow, because one thing about audit is it's very, very easy to be in one place for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like tech that's, if you build one nice design like this, everybody promote gas you and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to be stuck somewhere for a long time. So you have to be in a place where people are constantly growing.
Okay.
So I mean, if you can find an organization that allows you to constantly grow, then by all means go for it. It's not just every place you should work for because you're looking for something to do.
All right.
Don't do that.
Now I'm just going to ask you a few random. So,
Sure.
what is one new thing you learned this week that just passed?
What is one new thing I learned this week?
Mm.
Like completely random, out of the
Random,
blues, like
random.
random thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm a very, I like learning about a ton of things. I just like I'm a very, most people that know me personally know that I'm a very,
You're always learning
I have
something,
so
so
many
this is going to
interests,
be long.
so many interests. Like so many interests. Like the thing I learned this week was actually how pi was
What?
invented, which was very funny. Pi like 3.14, like how we came about the value for like pi, and like why it's so irrational. So that was one thing I learned this week. I don't know why. I don't know why I decided to go and find out
I
why
should
how
look
pi
into
was
that because
invented.
it seems
But
intriguing to know why it is 22/7. Because
yeah,
why
like
is it
it's a
over
very it's
7?
very funny. Even the I think when I was watching the video, I actually had to go and read an article. It was a very strange, like it's a very strange idea. Nobody really understands why it's rational, but it's just rational. So that's something I learned this week. How pi
All
was
right.
invented.
So rate this podcast in 3 words.
I should rate the podcast. in 3 words. So I listen to your podcast like a lot. Like I listen to your podcast like a whole lot. I love collateral goods. So if I were to rate it in 3 words, I would say it's fun,
Mm-hmm.
yet I don't want to say yet serious because that's just cut. That's what I'm saying. But like I don't know. Let me not use 3 words because 3 words seems like too little. But then it's fun, but it still tells you like gives you direct like how truth, and then you get to hear from young people who are still growing. Because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, a lot of people that you invite are people who are also still trying to make something of themselves in their career. So to
Exactly.
kind of like feel like you're not alone in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Honest recommendation. I feel like now that you've got an auditor, you can also invite people who are not exactly be tech people, so that all of us can also get insight. So that it's not just tech. It's not
Yeah.
just
Mm-hmm.
it's not just tech. So yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining this episode. I really learned a lot because in my head, audit and compliance people were people nobody wants to work with because you guys just give everybody a hard time, and I don't understand why we all keep fighting. But I understand from your point of view because you are just trying to make sure everything is good for the company. If the company is good, then everybody in the company is good as well. So let me just ask you this little spicy question.
All right,
Why do
cool,
you
cool.
think everybody has a problem with compliance
So
and auditing?
to be honest, yeah, if you look at compliance, audit, control, is nobody likes to be told that they are wrong, and that's really what those jobs come to do. Because I come to your space, I don't work there with you, and I come to your space, I tell you that you've messed up here. Definitely, you feel some type of way because the truth is, a lot of times I always try to tell maybe if I'm carrying out an engagement, I try to tell my auditees that I assume you know your job so well that muscle memory allows you miss out on some things.
Mm,
And the thing is, if you do something constantly, like if you do something constantly, it gets to a point where you can't even explain how you do it. You just do it. So it's always essential to have someone who's objective, who can, because a lot of times you might be doing this thing for a long time,
mm-hmm,
and then you realize that you can bypass this particular step because it
mm,
makes it faster and
mm-hmm,
doesn't necessarily affect the end goal. And then you bypass it, and then it just forms like a daily routine.
mm-hmm.
But by bypassing that step, you're potentially causing challenge for you down the line. But because it's not affecting what is the output, you think you're good
Okay.
to go. So it's not me to now come in and say, okay, I've watched your process. I see you're bypassing this particular step.
But
Now, I'm not saying you don't know your job because clearly, if you don't know your job, you'll be here. I'll be auditing you. You know your job, like you know it very
mhm,
well. But muscle memory has kind of come into a point where you don't necessarily think about the process anymore. And in fact, a lot of times, one thing you realize that a lot of people who make the most mistakes on the job are people who have been there for a long time. Not like the most mistakes, but then the most very very silly
money.
mistakes. Like, how did you miss this? And it's not like I said they didn't know what they were doing, but because you've been doing this for years, you're so confident in your ability that you
That,
miss out on that process. And then
yeah.
you look at the output. Maybe your output is meant to be 2.5 and you're getting 2.5. But you don't know that somewhere you have added one plus, remove one minus, added
Mm-hmm,
one thing, yeah, and you don't know, but because you've missed that whole step and the output is correct, you're good to go. So me now coming to say, even though with all this your worth of experience, and with your industry expertise, I am telling you that you are wrong here. Nobody likes it. So that's where the animosity comes from. It's because people don't like to be told that they are wrong. And even we as auditors, because we also, if you look at auditors also gets like quality. I mean, every audit team is ideally meant to have like a quality assurance person there.
mm-hmm.
So after you've done your engagement, you come back and then you say, okay, let's look at what you have done. I look at your working papers. I look at your audit program. You mess up here, mess up here, mess up here. We also fight with them because we're like, why are you telling me I'm wrong? I did this job. I've gotten my findings. Why are you telling me I'm wrong? So the truth is nobody likes to be told that they are wrong, especially from somebody who doesn't work there with you. So me now coming as an outsider to say, you are wrong, go definitely will not sit down well with
Yeah.
anybody. So that's just why they
Okay.
don't like us.
Okay. Okay. I kind of understand small. Well, we still need to find a common ground. I mean, over time, I think in my experience with working with compliance, even legal and auditing, those are my three worst people to, they're my three biggest fighters, especially legal. I've just learned to, okay, let's walk around with what they've said so we can find a common ground because we can't do 100% of what you are saying. And we need to make sure that customers are satisfied with our product as well. So, great. Thank you so much, Dante, for
You're most
sharing your
welcome. Yes,
wisdom
yes.
into this field that old people go into.
And truthfully, I get a lot of guy, you're too young to be an audit. I get it a lot. And I don't know why. because a lot of young people are trying all these days. Like, you have young people coming into the space, and I don't know why people feel like it's a good man space because you have to start young. You can't just come in as a 50-year-old man. See, I'm not to. You have to start from somewhere. So
And you
these
have
people, as they
to
are going to, we have to come in and take over.
continue. Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay. It's understandable. I guess
yeah.
that's your journey. Cool, cool, cool. We understand. But thank you so much for joining. Thank you so
All
much
right,
for
welcome, welcome. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed doing this. Yeah.
I would next time I work with somebody in auditing and compliance, I would, try to show them more grace because I
Please do,
understand.
please, because it's our job. We like to be shown grace, and usually a lot of times when you find somebody who is very open to you, it's very nice. Like, we feel good because they're like, they have not antagonized us from the beginning. We can have a good engagement. So it's very nice when
Hmm.
it's very
Okay,
nice.
thank you so much. This
All
has
right.
been insightful, and yeah, thanks everyone that's watched this. I hope you understand. And if you're a products person or you work with compliance and auditing, so you can show them grace now. I think if you want to, but yeah, that's it. Thank you, and bye.